Hopefully Debbie will join us. We will call our meeting to order. And we'd like to ask everyone to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So all would rise. Ready, begin. I pledge to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to welcome all of those joining us tonight, visiting or attending us virtually for our board meeting this evening. We're going to follow through with our agenda, and we're first going to begin with allowing anyone who would wish to address the board to any specific action item or discussion to have their turn now. We are going to limit comments to 2 minutes because we suspect there may be a lot of comments coming in this evening. So we will open up the floor for those who wish to speak.
And so if you put in the chat that you would like to speak, Dr. Bloomquist will be tracking on that and call upon you when that agenda item comes up, and you'll be allowed to speak at that time.
And in the chat right now, we have Susan Merritt who'd like to speak regarding the elementary starting back up.
Thank you.
Wait, Susan.
Yeah.
When we get to that point, the agenda item, then you'll be called upon.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And then the other one we have in the chat is Mr. Musser, who would like to speak about teachers' stance on reopening. So when we get to that point as well.
Thank you.
So I just have a quick comment to make before we get going. I noticed that 2 of the people in the meeting are not wearing masks and everyone else is wearing masks. So I just wanted to bring that up. I made a point last week to address the commissioners not wearing masks in their meetings. So I would be remiss if I didn't do the same thing in a meeting I was a part of. So I just wanted to put that out there and see how comfortable everybody is with all the people that are wearing masks with the people that are not wearing masks.
And I'll ask a clarifying question. Are people comfortable not wearing masks if people need to speak for clarity for the audience? So.
I think that's fine.
I'm fine with that.
I am fine with that as well.
I'm home.
It's a good place to be.
Yes.
All right, sorry. All right. Superintendent Cole, you went to 2.3, is that?
Yeah, you know what, 2.3, Member Brownell is going to do this presentation for the board, and that's the recognition of Jake Musser, recipient of the Rogue Gateway Rotary Club's Vocational Service Award. So we'll turn it over to Member Brownell.
Hello. So this is congratulations to Allendale Principal Jake Musser for winning the 2021 Vocational Service Award from Rogue Gateway Rotary. The annual award is given to non-Rotarians who have demonstrated high ethical standards and who have achieved distinction through exceptional leadership, creativity, and efforts in their profession and community service. The award is accompanied by a grant of $500, which Mr. Musser will be donating to the Maslow Project, a partner with District 7 in meeting the needs of our homeless population. I am quoting Steve and Christy Rowe, who nominated Jake. Christy gathered pictures, testimonials from students and staff, and they are overflowing in praise and appreciation. Jake always has a huge smile and sincere and enthusiastic warmth for all. He will bend over backwards for kids and has the kindest heart. He truly loves the students, and it shows in everything he does. When approached for approval for projects or field trips, he not only listens closely with respect, but does whatever he can to support and help. One student wrote about the time Mr. Musser saw him fishing with his dad, and Jake stopped and talked to them both. The respect and joy from that encounter was reflected tenfold. Jake is a good sport, dressing for the occasion, whether it is Dr. Seuss Day, science fair, chess club, or your favorite superhero. My favorite story of going above and beyond is his signature smile, even when grabbing a mop or broom when a problem requiring such tools arises. Thank you, Mr. Musser, for educating our youth and making our community a better place. And congratulations.
Musser, are you on with us tonight to hear your accolades? I know your brother is.
Well, at this point, everyone would be standing and applauding madly for Mr. Musser. So that's how everyone feels about him winning this award.
Well, thank you, Debbie, for that presentation. I'll just echo that. Mr. Musser is the principal where my children attend and does an excellent job and very well deserved. Great young man and good family too. So we're very pleased to have them in our district and to serve our children so well. So thank you. All right, we will now go to 2.4, returning to in-person instruction.
Yeah, so this is basic communication to the board and to our community. Tonight, we have made a recommendation and decision to open elementary schools, kindergarten through fifth grade to hybrid instruction beginning next Monday, February 1st. The process to do that was first finding out from our patrons, engaging students, staff, and parents regarding their desire to come back. For parents, 92% of parents who are in CDL right now expressed a desire in the poll. We had over 2,000 families participate in that poll. For staff, we had 72% said yes, and another 13% said when the vaccine becomes available, yes. And for students, 93% of those attending in CDL are eager to come back. So that with that information, as well as the metrics being advisory and this truly being a local decision, regardless if we're outside of the 350 students, I have polled and communicated with each individual board member, and we have 100% board support for this decision. We've consulted with the health department who are supportive of our plan, knowing that we have experience with elementary kids doing this. You know, that we strongly are considering the mental health of our students and families with 4 suicides since the pandemic started, teenage suicides, along with an additional 2 or 3 suicide attempts that were fortunately unsuccessful. So in combination of all that, it's our strong recommendation and decision that we are opening schools on December 1st.
February.
Or excuse me, February 1st. I've messed that date up so many times. So I wish it was December 1st, right? So at this time, I think we'd welcome any board comments on the matter.
Can we begin?
Yes.
We'll start with our board members. Any board members have any comments on that? Gary?
I think the board should take a vote and go on record to support the February 1st decision.
Okay. We can have a motion maybe at the end of the request for people wishing to speak, if you'd like to make that motion.
Sure.
I'll make a comment that I fully support the district's decision to return to in-person instruction. Feels like we get information every day about things we're learning about the virus and what's good for communities and vaccine rolling out. Every day more people are getting vaccinated. Today the CDC came out and said that kids being in school is not leading to the spread of this virus as long as the community is following other guidelines to keep the spread from going crazy in other ways. And so the more I read and try to stay educated on what's happening and what best information is out there, it only further supports my support of the district's decision to open.
I guess this is Cliff Kuhlman. I would like to say that we need to be very aware that this is a local decision that our district was allowed by the governor to make on our own, but not without plenty of advice. And we've had a lot of information from the governor from the beginning, and have always felt well informed. And this seems to me, although I wasn't in favor of it a month ago, to be a much better time to do this. At the same time, I do read reports from other districts, local districts in Oregon, that actually had already started, and now they have to pull back. And I think what we're doing makes a lot more sense. We're more deliberate in our plans. But you can't predict the future.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is it just a happy dance or you want to speak?
No, I was gonna copy that. That was my statement.
So I'm gonna further that with, we have received well over 80 written communications to the board that are in your packet. We will not read all 80 of those into the record. Some are multi-pages long. I will give a quick summary. We have one written communication for a student who is very much in favor of a high school student desiring to return. We had 2 staff members anonymously submit in writing who were opposed to returning to school. We had 5 staff members who would prefer to wait until the second round of vaccines is available. We have 28 staff members who submitted written comments that are completely in favor of returning to school as proposed. And then we have at least 54 families representing probably nearly 100 students who are completely in favor of getting all kids back to school, not just elementary. So that's just a summary of what is in your packet. I encourage you to take those home with you tonight and read through those as a board. And so I think at this time we can open it up for public comment.
So Kurt, before we do that, there were a number of items that popped up in the chat, individuals requesting more information on what the reopening looks like. So can we go through the process that has been bargained with our teachers?
Yes, so at this point, we can open elementary and we have to do it in a hybrid model. We still have to follow the Ready School Safe Learners guidance from the Oregon Department of Ed, which still requires 35 square feet per individual in the classroom, as well as maintaining 6 feet of social distancing to the extent possible is the caveat that is put in there, knowing that people will have to move around a room for various activities. However, student stations are set up 6 feet apart. And for that reason, we cannot put an entire class in a classroom because of the given space. So we do have to open in a hybrid model at the elementary level. After 2 weeks of successful rollout of elementary, we can then move to look to bring back middle schools in a hybrid model. And then 2 weeks of successful opening at the middle school, we can then return high school students also in a hybrid model. Is that
I hope that that answers the questions that were put forth in the chat. And we will now open up comments from those who would like to speak.
Dr. Bloomquist, we'll turn it over to you.
All righty. So Susan Merritt, you're up first if you would like to go ahead and speak for 2 minutes on your topic.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to read a letter. This letter is in the packet. I sent it in today. So, dear District 7 board members and Superintendent Kolb, returning to in-person learning before elementary administrators, teachers, and classified staff are allowed to receive our recommended second dose of the COVID-19 vaccine is completely inequitable and reckless. Josephine County is experiencing skyrocketing new case numbers of COVID-19. We are knowing more and more families who are testing positive and having to quarantine because of this deadly disease. We have experienced positive cases within our buildings, even without students learning in person. This board meeting is virtual because it is simply unsafe and irresponsible to meet in person. It is highly unfair that our district and board put teachers, administrators, and classified staff of our elementary schools in the front lines and unprotected, while our middle and high school colleagues get the full protection and security of receiving their second dose and waiting the 14 days before returning to in-person teaching. How is this okay? It is not. Public health, medical experts, and scientists all agree that in order to receive full protection from COVID-19, the correct protocol to follow is getting the first vaccine, waiting 21 days to receive the second dose, and then waiting 14 days after. Is D7 really going to be a district that refuses to follow science? Are elementary teachers, staff, and our families really that disposable to this district? What happened to We Are GP? It is really easy to say, send the students back when you are not the ones in the front lines and unprotected.
Okay,
In
that's
closing,
a little over your 2 minutes.
I would just
Susan.
like to say that I love my job. I love my students. I'm a dedicated educator. I have taught kindergarten and third grade for D7 for 16 plus years. I am begging you to please reconsider having us go back to in-person teaching starting on Monday, February 1st. Please give us the opportunity to receive our second dose and wait the recommended 14 days after. I do not want to get sick and die or endanger my family simply because my district thought it was okay to ignore science and send me back into the front line without the protection. What was that?
Susan, I think your time is more than up. So thank you very much. And you've got
Send me back into the front lines without the protection that I deserve and are afforded, and others are afforded. Sincerely, Susan Merritt.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think we got all that. Okay. John Musser, your time is up now to speak.
Thanks, guys. Hey, first of all, for my brother Jake, that was a vocational Rotary Award, and that kid hasn't worked a day in his life, so I don't know how he got a vocational award, but that's all right. Hey, I'm going to speak to the opposite. Within our school district, more than anything, I want the school board to understand the fact that a majority of teachers are ready to go back. They want to go back. They want to take the risks that there might be. A month ago, it was 72% when that, and actually it was over a month ago. And a lot of us have one shot in our arm and feel even better about it. From a personal standpoint, since July, I personally have been out with 100 kids all summer and fall in outside in workouts. We did not have one single incident of COVID within that population. I ran two summer cohorts with 10 kids in them. Didn't have a single case within those two cohorts. And then since it was allowed, I've had 2 LIPI groups at the high school, limited in-person instruction, that have been around 10 kids in each of those cohorts and 0 cases of COVID. I have a colleague, Gretchen Hood, who has done the same. We've done it, and by listening to the guidelines and following the guidelines, we've been very successful at it. Here's my concern. My concern through this whole thing is I think there is a vast population of teachers that feel completely muzzled by our union. We don't feel represented. We feel like much of what we say falls on deaf ears. We answer the surveys. We answer the open-ended surveys, when we get stuff sent to us asking us to provide input, and that nobody's really sure where that input goes. Most of us honestly think it goes in the waste can if it's not reinforcing what the agenda is of said union. And there's just, it's a classic case of the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And there's a bunch of us that, we want kids back, and it's for the sake of the kids, because we're at a critical mass right now. And you can see it in the eyes. We're at a point now, Football wise, we're working with 50 kids a night because the numbers are restricted, but I can see it in their eyes. They're losing hope. Kids in the Lippy groups, there's such a difference between those kids that I see, even though there's only 10 of them each day or each group. That group of kids, just because they have 2 hours here at the school, it's a completely different outlook that they have, and they're in such a different place than the kids that I just see on a screen. And with that, guys, I just want to make sure that voice is heard, and because it is the majority, and hopefully it's no longer the silent majority. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mus. Just going down the list here, the Wyarty family asked to have a word.
Hi there. My name is Jenner Wyarty. I'm the head track coach at Grants Pass. I also work with at-risk and special ed populations, along with low-income students and populations and families. I would like to advocate for those types of kids. I don't know what's ringing in the background, sorry. Specifically, I'm going to point out 3 instances. I ran an optional track and field workouts this last winter. Our numbers are down dramatically across the board. You wait till numbers come out in sports and you're going to see kids and families that aren't out. They're getting jobs, which I don't blame them. They have nowhere to go, and I don't blame them. And we're abandoning these kids, and we're foolish if we're going to sit here and say, follow the science and follow this and follow that. What about the science of our kids? What about the kids that I've seen and had to tell that they've committed suicide? And I've had to talk to their friends and dealing with them. I had a young gal come out to my track and field workout one day. She'd gained 30 pounds. 30 pounds. I saw her one day. She left in tears. These kids are gaining weight. They're losing self-esteem. We're talking about things that are somewhat intangible. I'm calling radish on the science. We're using these kids, and I hate to say this, as political pawns. This isn't politics. This is kids. I'd also like to say and give a representation of my at-risk youth. They don't have a choice. They don't have 2 parents at home. They don't have 1 parent at home to watch out for them and hold their hand and take them through the education system. They go home and get their asses beat. That's not very much fun. So they need a voice. And for those teachers that are scared to go back, I am with you. My dad is a vulnerable person. I haven't seen him in 2 years. So I'm sure we can finally find a way to give those teachers some support so they can stay home. And if they need a long-term sub or a short-term sub, I'm pretty sure we can do that. We can have the best of all worlds, not just one. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Coach. Going down my list here, Kelly Fitzgerald would like to speak as a parent.
I reiterate the same concerns that the Wyarty family has and the Musters have. As a parent, you talk about how it's difficult to be scared for teachers to go back. But I watch as it's difficult to be scared to leave your children at home because you don't know if they're going to be the ones who are going to kill themselves next. Because they don't have anything to live for. This is their world that has been taken away. And you can't tell them that you're keeping them safe when I watch and I go to work and I work in the courts and I see the kids that are being abused every day because they don't have anywhere safe to go. They can't go to their schools. They can't talk to their teachers. They can't talk to their counselors, who are their only lifelines to stay safe. They're being abused. They're being sexually abused. They're being scarred for life. And this isn't just a fear or something you hear in the media. This is something I see with my own eyes. And we're fortunate where we have resources and our kids have gotten counseling and gotten help to try to get them out of their depressions, but they no longer have sports. And we're trying to take care of all of their friends who don't have parents who are involved, who don't have anybody who is speaking on their behalf. who are going home and literally have no food in their home. And all of this has been taken away because of COVID and in the name of keeping them safe. And it's common sense is all I'm asking for. You're killing our kids, literally. You're taking away everything that they have, not only now, but in the future. They don't have the ability to even apply for colleges. I'm struggling to try to get my kid into colleges. I can't even apply for a stupid FAFSA. It's so ridiculous. I would love to have the college center there helping him to be able to make those applications an easier process for him. So all of these things are happening now that we aren't going to ever be able to fix. So whatever, we can't continue to wait for weeks. We can't continue to wait to see what happens and to safely reopen. If we're going to be safe about it, we need to reopen now. And we need to give this to our kids now while they still have a chance and an opportunity to be able to have a future.
Okay,
And
thank
our
you.
kids have spoken too, and they're not being heard. We're trying to teach them to be respectful and to do things the right way and to not make waves and to just let the people do their jobs and let our administration do their jobs. And they're getting closed doors in their faces every time they turn around. They're going out there, they're talking to the media, they're taking a stand, and they're telling you what they need, and they're not being heard.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Lacey Smith, you are up.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm a little choked up by what she was saying. I 100% agree that kids need to come back and they need to be represented and they need to be kept safe. And I can speak from a teacher's perspective and a parent's perspective that this isn't working. This isn't something that kids can continue to be asked to do. And it's not something that parents should be asked to do. We went to school to be teachers and we want this position and parents don't. They're in a position now where we're starting to see families fall apart and we're starting to see good kids and good people who we would never have thought were in danger of suicide or risks such as that, starting to see them take serious risks with their life and hurting themselves and just feeling this incredible sense of just isolation. We've seen so many kids that we know are in pain mentally and emotionally, but they don't get noticed because that's not something that is brought up in the media or otherwise. And I just feel like if teachers really feel that it is unsafe to return, I agree with the long-term sub option. I think that that's one of the things we have available is the GP Online option to switch to that. Or there are other options for a profession as well, if you feel like that's something that you have to do. But I 100% agree that we just need to make sure that we are protecting students, and protecting students means bringing them back and letting them just know that we care about them. I feel like so many kids right now think that teachers don't care, and that hurts me a lot. And I hope that the message comes through that that's not how all teachers feel. And I'm thankful for what I'm hearing tonight, that the support is there to come back.
Thank you, Lacey. And lots of comments in the chat, so those are all being recorded, just so everybody knows. And then I've got Scott Wakefield. Looks like you're the next up to speak.
Good evening, everybody. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Just making sure I had to get on with my phone. So, I would like to agree with the recent sentiments here that have been shared. Not only as a teacher, I believe it's our duty to these kids. And also speaking as a father, I have a daughter that's immunodsuppressed, and 2 high school kids, so a 5th grader and a freshman and a sophomore. And my kids are truly grinding. And the part that's sad for me is that here in my household, we get our kids up, we have them have breakfast, we make them change their clothes, built a big table for them to have their school in. Don't let them sit in their beds all day. Don't let them do all those things that negatively contribute to their mental health. And I have 3 kids that are really, really struggling. And I don't say, I hope this, I don't want to have dad goggles here, but I have good kids. And if they're struggling in a household with 2 parents that are checking grades every day and helping them with their homework and all those things, what about the large percentage of kids that don't have that? Like Coach Musser said, I too have been doing the after school tutoring, and it can be safely done. Shame on us if we can't have a little bit of an imagination to solve some of these issues. Today I presented something, I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but I presented for middle school and high schools to have lunchless school. There's a schedule where they can take their classes in the morning. We can send them home with a bag of lunch. And then Fridays, you can have half come in the morning and half come in at night and clean it at lunch. Let's not just be stuck in the mud. Let's do it for these kids. And it doesn't have to be the same. This can be a different year where, because it definitely has been, where we have an imagination and we do what we need to do for these kids. We are essential. Let's do it for the children. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Scrolling through the comments again, lots of comments that are in there. It looks like Kyle Bautista would like to speak as a student. Kyle, can you unmute yourself?
Looks like he just in the chat can't get his microphone to work.
All right. Well, Kyle, if you want to go ahead and put your comments in the chat, those can also be recorded. That's the same as speaking to the board. And if your microphone comes back on, just put it back in the chat and I can let you speak in a little bit. We'll move on. Let's see. Comment. Ray B would like to speak as a student.
Hello. I'm Rayla Brace, and I am a student at Grants Pass High School. And my input that I have to say is that it is very lonely and very isolating, and you don't really have very much motivational support. But at my home, I know I do, and I have 2 parents, and one's actually on the board right now. So, and I agree with Wyardi that we need to send us back to school because I am starting to feel kind of in the dumps a little bit, and I'm usually not. So, and grades are slipping because we don't have any accountability and no one to be there to be like, you need to keep on going. What about that assignment that you didn't do? And what about this that you didn't do? And so, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. I've got a good more comments that are in there. I think that's all I have who would like to speak at this time. Again, we're collecting all of the comments that go into the chat if you'd like to put something in there. And I think, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for those who spoke and commented. I just will add one thing. I've been serving as the medical director for our Josephine County vaccination clinics that we held on Sunday and Monday. I saw many of our teachers there. I thank you for coming to get your vaccines. I want to publicly thank all the volunteers who made that event happen. And I know that our county is feverishly working to continue that. I do want to point out one thing that I don't think people realize. Our governor mandated that the elderly, those over 65, wait 2 more weeks in order to get the teachers vaccinated so that we can get our kids back to school. And I think that speaks volumes over how important this is from a governor's perspective, from a federal or national perspective, and from us as a school district. to ensure that our children get the education and the support that they need. And I appreciate your comments tonight. I think we want to go back. We want to do it safely. I have 4 children that will be going back. Ultimately, we will do this safely. There is no doubt in my mind that this will be fine. But I would just want to point out, I think, to the teachers that you have been bumped above the elderly so that we can go back to school. And I hope you appreciate that. I hope you take advantage of the opportunity to receive your vaccine so we can get these kids back to school. So for those who have, thank you. For those who are vacillating, please study that. There's a great YouTube video done by some guy who's bald who talks about that. But he is passionate about making sure that people understand why we need to do this so we can get our kids back to school. So thank you. I believe we had a nomination for a vote. Gary, would you like to put that on there?
Mr. Board Chair, if I could just interject, it looks like Kyle got his microphone to work. Do you want to take one more public comment?
Sure, we can do that. Thank you.
All right, Kyle, you have the floor for 2 minutes.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, sorry, I joined through my phone, but I just wanted to say that online learning has been really hard for me. First off, by not being able to see the people I love that I grew up with, and knowing it's my senior year, and I'm never gonna see a lot of them again if I don't go back to school. But it just seems like everyone around me that was so happy just a year ago is all depressed now, and of course, the numbers are gonna show less kids that do have problems because no one's going to go out and say, hey mom, hey dad, I think I'm depressed, because that's just not a conversation you want to have with your parents. But it's really hard because I mean, I've had 2 loving parents and they've really helped me a lot and everything's going great. But as a kid who has it pretty much perfect and everything all set up, it's still really hard for me to just get up in the mornings now every day. It just seems like a harder thing to do. And I can't imagine kids that don't have everything, like all the resources they need right now, because it can be really hard. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Kyle.
This is Gary Richardson. I would move that the Board of School District 7
support the recommendation for superintendent.
Support the recommendation from the superintendent to start the in-person instruction for the students on February 1st.
Second.
So it's been moved and twice seconded. Does anyone want to throw out a second just for any further comment?
Second.
I have a question. Kirk, do you think you could just speak for a moment on our protocols as far as safety is concerned? If cases start popping up, that we have a plan in place?
Sure, absolutely. So Sherry has a direct line to the health department. Should there be an exposure at any level, immediately that person is isolated, contact tracing, and phone calls go out to other individuals who need to also quarantine. If it happens to be a whole class, we will quarantine a whole class and they will go home and do CDL from home for the period of quarantine time, then we can bring them back. We did that back when we had K-3 instruction. We had to do that at, I believe, 2 of our schools, Riverside and Allendale. And we did that successfully. And there was no transmission tied directly back to the school. If for some reason there was a mass exposure across the school and we didn't have enough staff to actually operate in person, we would then turn the whole school into CDL for a period of time of quarantine. So we demonstrated we can be very nimble under those circumstances. Super impressed with our ability to carry out safety protocols when we were in person with K-3 and refine those as we went. The health department was very thrilled with how quickly we were able to refine or update protocols and safety measures. So feeling very confident that we can manage that as those incidents occur. Thank you. Yep.
I think there's some, if this is the time to do or not. There's some additional questions in the chat regarding the staggered comeback for middle school and high school, and if that would be a 2-week staggered approach.
Well, one of the things the health department, they can fully support this elementary opening. They would like to see the numbers start trending down, and I believe we are going to start seeing those numbers trend down based on what we've seen in the last week and then going into this week. And so that is a factor of which we would get county health support as well. Speaking with Dr. Candelaria on Monday morning. So it is a little bit of a wait and see, but if we can get those numbers really heading in the right direction, we can then begin implementing. It will be a 2-week minimum.
I guess I would like to comment. There is no right decision. There is no science decision. Everyone has different risks. And so for some people, the risk of COVID are minor compared to the other risks that they have. For other people, the risk of COVID is their higher risk. And for them, that's very concerning. We have a program for those people that the COVID risk is their highest risk, so that they don't have to participate in the children coming back to school. So it looks to me like people have the choice to select the risk that is most acceptable for them. So that's why I support letting the people who seem to have a little pent up demand for the going back to school, because those people haven't been able to pick the risk factors that are most important for them.
So why don't we go with our vote? There's a few more questions that are popping up. I'm seeing if we can try to answer those, but we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded twice. Any further comment on the motion? And third time, like
Could you reiterate the motion just for clarity? Someone?
What, Gary wasn't eloquent enough?
I prefer the secretary to read it back.
Member Richardson moved to support the recommendation from Superintendent Cole to start in-person instruction on February 1st. Member Durbin made a motion. Bailey Grange, no, I'm sorry. Member Richardson made the motion. Member Durbin seconded the motion.
So we're voting to approve the recommendations for kids to come back at all levels or just elementary?
Per contractual obligations, which would be elementary first in a hybrid model. And then obligations to have a 2-week period where we demonstrate that we can do that successfully, then move to the next level, and then 2-week demonstration at minimum that we can move to the high school level.
And we still, just to be clear, we still have a mechanism to change that if that is needed.
Change that.
Say we have a couple big outbreaks at the elementary schools. We have the ability to maybe hold off on going to the next step.
Yes.
If that
Yes.
were to
Yeah.
happen.
The 2-week is a minimum, and we have the ability to make a decision at the 2 weeks or continue to postpone that decision. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
or if you would, there's a number of questions on what contractual obligations. I don't think people understand that this is a teachers union bargain.
Yeah, this is that's a situation that has been bargained back in the fall, and that bargaining was based upon the guidance from the state that required that, and so it became part of the contract at that time back in the fall. So that is a position in which we've agreed to with the Teachers Association.
So the reason why we're not going back all hybrid right now partially is because of the contract negotiations result that happened last fall.
That would be one of them. Yeah, that would be one of the reasons. It would also be my recommendation to make sure we can do this well and then build upon that.
All right, so I hope that answers people's questions as to the reasoning of why. I believe the teachers union could at any time come back to the bargaining table and change their mind and let all of the schools, all of the children go back. And so maybe that is something that if people would like to write the teachers union, they could do so and encourage them to rebargain their position. But be that as it may, that position has been bargained previously and will stand currently. So we will now go to a vote. So Tanya, would you please call a roll call vote on our motion?
Member Dale Grange,
Yes.
Member Durbin? Yes. Member Brownell,
Yes.
Board Chair Nelson,
Absolutely, yes.
Member Coleman,
Yeah.
Member Wilkins? Yes. Member Richardson?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It's a unanimous decision by the board to support our superintendent in reopening schools on February 1st for the elementary school in a hybrid model. Thank you very much. We look forward to a successful relaunch for our children and hope that we can continue to move forward with the junior high and high schools as we move forward. All right, item number 3, 3.0, our consent agenda. We will get that to the board. We will need an approval of our board agenda for this evening, as well as our board drafted minutes from our last meeting on January 12th.
Does Member Durbin so move?
I think we should strike with having people discuss retreat.
From the agenda.
Thank you, so noted and rejected.
That's cool, but no, that's it.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
No.
We have a roll call vote, please, Tanya.
Member Dale Grange,
Yes.
Member Durbin? Yes. Member Brownell,
Yes.
Board Chair Nelson?
Yes.
Member Coleman?
All right.
Member Wilkins? Yes. Member Richardson?
Yes.
Okay, 4.0 reports, staff reports. Director Evans, graduation data.
Hello, everybody. I just want to take a minute to thank all of our hardworking teachers out there and navigating this difficult situation. I appreciate all of their comments and input tonight. As we look at graduation rate and talk about student outcomes, you know, these are definitely different times and different ways to look at data. Graduation rates were made public last Thursday by the Oregon Department of Education. Those should have been sent to you on Thursday so you could see the results. And tonight's report is really to just comment on the growth we've made. As you know, we have our district improvement plan, and you've asked for routine check-ins to that district improvement plan. Our goal specifically states on our district improvement plan that annually we will increase the number of students graduating with 4- and 5-year high school diplomas and increase our overall completion rate for both 4- and 5-year cohorts. The metrics underneath that, besides monitoring our graduation rate, are to look at our dropout rate and to decrease our dropout rate average to be below the state average. So I just wanted to comment on the data. The first page in your packet tonight is the 4-year, or is the growth rate. What we did was we took the last 7 years for the graduation rate and the completion rate and showed you how much growth we've made over the last 7 years. So for example, if you're looking at 4-year cohort, Grants Pass High School had a 4.65% growth rate since 13-14, and the district as a whole 4.69. I put the state averages in there so that you can see that the state has made some really tremendous strides over the last few years, and we are wanting to learn from others around the state and what's working well across the state. We're really proud of our 5-year cohort graduation and completion rates. We actually, our 7-year growth rate for our 5-year completion is above the state growth rate. So we know that that students in District 7, many of our students, it takes about 5 years to either earn their high school diploma or their GED, and we continue to work hard to help them reach their goals. On the dropout rate, we did not quite meet our metrics in our district improvement plan. We're slightly 0.1% above the state average. The state average for dropout in 1920 was 2.38%, and our rate was 2.48. But I want you to notice the rate change for us. 7 years ago, our dropout rate was significantly above the state average at 5.7%. And we have worked diligently, and kudos to the many folks that work on recovering students who have given up hope, trying to get them back into a program that gives them an opportunity to finish something. On page 2 of your graduation data, you see a breakout of our subpopulations. When we did our community engagement activities for the student investment account last year, we looked at a few specific subpopulations where we noted students were not growing at rates that were similar to those in other subpopulations, specifically our male population, our Hispanics, our special ed students with disabilities, and our homeless students. And if you look at the growth that they've made over time, you'll see some really nice changes from 1819 to 1920. Specifically, want to call out for our Hispanic Latino population, we saw an increase of over 10% in the 1819 to 1920 school year. And that rate has slowly been increasing year after year. Our students with disabilities also made really great gains with a 5.63% increase. I want to draw your attention to raw numbers too. If you look at our homeless population, you might say, but we decreased in the percentage, but the raw number of graduates in 1819 that were homeless increased by 2 more students in 1920. So we are making incremental changes in that category as well. The last page in your packet today is, I was asked to put together a 5-year average for our grad rate and our 5-year average for completion rate. I didn't have it, I just did it for the last 5 years. I understand we need to add the 5-year rolling factor to that, and I just did not have time and preparation for this meeting today to do that. But this gives you a sense of what that would look like for at least the last 5 years for those 2 columns at the end that give you that average grad rate and completion rate. I know Ryan is on the line with us, and I want to turn it over to him briefly to tell you about some of the key work the high school's been doing to improve our graduation rate over the last few, especially over last year, and especially with the unique circumstances of the shutdown on March 13th.
Thank you, Trish. You summarized a lot of those things just exceedingly well. Keep in mind, we're proud of every student that goes through Grants Pass High School, through GPAS, through Gladiola, and even, of course, our GED students too. Obviously, our first and foremost goal is for every student to graduate in 4 years. And that is an area that we all recognize we want to grow in further. We have a further need to area of growth there. Super proud of our 5-year cohort rate and that getting up in percentage. And I think to me that is reflective of hope, and that our school staff, our counseling staff, our student success mentors, our teachers, most importantly, are providing hope for students. And whether a student graduates, as I've said before, in 3 or 3.5, 4 or 5 years, they are a success, and we celebrate that. Nevertheless, the news media will not cover the 5-year, they cover the 4-year. And that's why we want to continue to focus on that. And obviously all of us want people to finish on time as much as possible. So we've had some renewed efforts, obviously with distance learning. We've relied exceedingly so on electronics, on a lot of home visits, safe home visits with masks on and knocking on doors. Some of the comments our teachers made tonight are ring very true. There has been certainly some hope pieces there that are a little bit more difficult to latch onto as students find not only a reward in a paycheck by getting a job, but they also see the social interaction they have and they feel value about what they're doing. And so we know that's an additional challenge. It's one that we've tried to navigate one by one. It's those individual students conversations that our school staff has. So without a lot of more comment, you remember, I think a couple years ago, we had a staff summer PD reading on how to get our boys better engaged. And you see that, at one point we had a 13% difference in our boys to girls in graduation just a few years ago. And glad that gap's closing. And just like our Latinx and special education, those gaps are closing too. Our next reading is regarding the cultural differences that we have and how that affects our brain in teaching. And so we want to reach every subpopulation. And so that is as we have more professional development that's going to be coming our way, we will be reading that book as a staff. So all for now, unless there are questions.
What's the difference between the cohort rate and the completion rate?
Cohort graduation rate considers regular diplomas and modified diplomas. The completion rate adds in students who have earned their GED.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Well, I will just say it's impressive to see where we were a few years ago and where we are. So, and I worked with Principal Thompson on a few committees previously, and I saw the hard work that goes into improving these numbers, and I'm very grateful for the efforts. And I'm ecstatic that we're seeing excellent results. And obviously, there's more work to do, but I think it makes everyone feel really good to see that what we are doing is making progress and is improving the numbers that we're seeing in the graduates. So thank you very much for your hard work. All right, 4.1.2, our new school model. Director Bloomberg.
All right, well, these challenging and strange times have presented us with opportunities to push our technology boundaries like no other time. And we've been operating this year with our GP Online program, which has been a model for families who did not want their students in our physical buildings and to do a 100% remote program. And there is data that's good about online programs. There's other data out there in research that when we combine it with some other modes of learning, some in-person, some hands-on, and different methodologies, that it actually can be a really great learning environment for kids. So what we're proposing is a new school, and we're not calling it an online school at this point because we want to be flexible, but we really are sending an open invitation out to our community to give us feedback and input on what you'd like it to be. We have a lot of homeschool families that are in the area, for example, for whatever reasons are choosing that we might be able to partner with them and provide some curriculum and content where they may not have that expertise in their background, where we can work together. This learning from home, we have a lot of students that have learned that they can do this and they kind of like that, but they might also like to be in person. And we know from the brain science how important being in person is, making connections with people. It's really critical for us as human beings. And so we're looking again for input on that. Predominantly, this school will be virtual in content, whether that is teacher created or curriculum that is a digital curriculum. So we're looking into those possibilities, but we definitely want to get input. And so we're looking at a timeline here of sharing this with the board, getting your feedback and insights on it, and then getting surveys out to families, certainly current GPO families, staff, parents, kids. We'd like to get input from everybody. And then we'd also like to have a couple of open houses where we could do a virtual open house, sort of like this, where we could take input from people, get suggestions, those kinds of things. This will be a full-fledged school. We're in communication and working with the state on that process for making a full institution. There's an institution ID and there's some parameters there. It'll be compliant with all the Division 22 standards, and we are excited about this opportunity. Tongue-in-cheek wise, we're calling it GP Flex, just to be flexible and something a little more personalized for families, and that partnership and just doing something different. So that's the big idea, but we'd like to move forward, and we'd like to start getting input from people. And we would like also, if the board has any ideas or suggestions, we're open, all ears on that process.
Thank you, Dr. Bloomquist. So we're in different times. What is the new normal, we ask ourselves, and so it's a great opportunity, I think, to take all of what we've learned in this COVID situation, all of what we know from traditional school and experiences, and solicit input in an opportunity to create a niche that may have grown during this time. We have a number of families who have had a positive experience with GP Online, but maybe wish they could do orchestra, or wish they were out on the field, being part of the band, or being part of an athletic team, or coming in for CTE classes and things like that. So it's really exploring all those avenues, and then appealing to the homeschool population is what is appealing about that. What might be appealing about things we can offer in public school in conjunction with curricula that they're used to. So we want to go down this pathway and seize the opportunity and be creative with this.
Well, I'd just like to comment that I really appreciate the work the district's doing in this area. It fits with my mindset of each student is an individual. We should treat them as such. And this just breaks it down even further to be able to give more personalized instruction based on what a specific student needs. So thumbs up.
Thank you.
Exciting.
Right. Is this, how does this relate to what we do now with GP Online? Is this like an evolution, a replacement?
I would say it's going to be an evolution. We want the feedback, first of all, is what's your experience been with GPO? And then how could that have been enhanced? So we've had our hiccups with that. We've learned a lot of lessons with what we have done, and we feel like we can, it would be an evolution of that, or an evolution of traditional school that has a strong element of that. So we really don't know what it's going to look like, and really want stakeholder input as we design it, and understand what the constraints are, but still play within the required box of ODE and all other requirements as a public school.
Sure. Yeah. So this would eventually probably replace GP Online.
I think it has that strong potential.
Okay.
Yeah, Brian, I think that the idea is, we kind of needed to create a GP Online given the circumstance that the world was in. We'd like to actually have a larger conversation with families about what meets their needs. And so this one could be that one size fits all sort of a deal, where you could be 100% online if you needed to, but you could also have other bits and pieces that were better for your learning style, for your children and your family. So I kind of view this as an evolutionary step for us.
Thank you, Todd.
Other comments? I do have one person in the chat who would like to make a comment too. So, but I'd like to make sure the board members have a chance to share out.
I think we're good. Todd, why don't you let them speak?
Okay. Indra, you have the floor if you'd like to take up to 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I was really surprised to see this on the agenda because I hadn't heard anything about it. I just find it interesting that we're talking about getting our kids back to school because they're struggling, and yet now we're at the same time talking about creating a whole new virtual school for kids. So it seems kind of contradictory to me there. I also am concerned about I don't know, it seems like maybe it's trying to compete with homeschool students and their whatever private entities they're learning from, like kind of reaching out to homeschool. I guess I would say that the majority of homeschool my kids have all gone to public schools. I've been very, very happy with District 7 schools for my kids, but most of the kids I know going to homeschool do not want the school curriculum, and that's why they're doing homeschooling. So it just seems odd. I get that it's an evolution because you've developed it, so maybe why not go there, but it just seems like an odd overreach to me of, I don't know, just a way to keep our kids in the school grasp that maybe are doing other things. Plus, you're adding a layer of bureaucracy with having its own principal and staff. And so with the school always needing money and funding every year, it seems like another added expenditure in there. So that's all. Those are just some thoughts I had.
Indra, we welcome you to join the process with us as we continue to have conversations that I think will answer a lot of your questions that you just had. And then that's the kind of input that we want to hear and be part of that process. We know that there's a niche of kids out there for which they did have a positive online experience, or they did leave Grants Pass School District to go to a virtual school. And why would we want them to have to go outside of our district to access things that meet their needs? And so we want to know what those needs are and be able to be responsive as their local public school district. And so we welcome you to be part of that process, as you'll see invitations come out to join meetings to gather that input.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Bloomquist.
You're welcome.
We'll go to 4.3, board reports and special concerns. Our first would be 4.3.1 to begin superintendent evaluation. And I sent an email out to each of you this week to outline a process by which that could happen. And I'd entertain any questions or comments, and I will also let Kurt speak to that a little bit more, because I think.
Sure. Just prior to that is the progress report on superintendent goals is presented. Those goals, no, it feeds correctly. They go together.
Right down this agenda.
They go together. No worries, Scott. Not a lot of comment, but the board did receive this in your electronic packet as related, because this will tie directly to the superintendent evaluation, which will occur. Scott laid that out in an email to the board. If you have any questions regarding that, Scott might be available to assist. So really, ultimately, the standards and the goals within the standards are there, types of measures that are suggested, and then progress notes or evidence. This is updated from the last time the board looked at these in the variety of areas. And if the board had questions on what any of these are specifically, most of them are self-explanatory, but I would be glad to answer questions from the board.
You know that in Scott's email he sent out, he read the riveting document of the superintendent evaluation. I want to make note that that is an updated version from what we have read in the past.
Very much updated.
Very much updated. And they all felt the same pain at the conference when I spoke to them, and the need for the new updated. So it's attached to his email. And I think after the conference, I had time to print it for me. But it's a completely different piece that we should probably all get caught up on.
Much more clarity.
Yeah.
I don't think I had read the previous one, so thankfully it sounds like I didn't have much to compare it to. The new one, it is a pretty easy read. It's 36 pages, but honestly, most of it are tables and charts and graphs, and it goes pretty quickly. And I tried to outline in the email some of the areas of evaluation and sections that are pertinent to us, but also pertinent to Kirk and his responsibilities in coming and presenting his year in review, if you will, and then our responsibilities in filling out our thoughts and feelings. I think the best comment that I read was on page 1, where they just mentioned that this should be a constructive process, and I hope that we will make it so as we go through this process. And so you will receive an email with those questions on them, and then I think it's to me, from what I understood, to as the board chair to present those to all of us on our, I think it was the December 9th, December 23rd meeting. December, see, I'm doing with
February.
February 23rd meeting. And then we'll talk about that in an executive session, and then we'll have a statement that we will present to the public after that.
So the item that we seem to have tripped over the most last year had to do with the 360 evaluation, which we attempted to do, it didn't come off well. As I read through the current manual, it actually sort of has that in there.
So it has a
But it
different.
doesn't get too specific on how you do that. And since we didn't do a great job last year, I'm looking to improve this year.
So as I read through the manual, it essentially said you have an opportunity to identify key stakeholders that we as a board would like to hear from regarding Kirk's interactions with them. And I think it would be nice for us to be able to identify some of those individuals this year, and then hopefully we can ask them to participate next year. I don't know that there will be enough time to make this a smooth process. I guess that was my only concern. It is a big deal to go out and identify people. I think this year is unique in the sense that we haven't, I don't know how much in-person interaction we've had, but I think that Kirk can speak to some of the individuals who may be pertinent for us to hear from, including his executive team, but we can identify those key stakeholders and then bring them in the next year. So that was my thought. I'm happy to entertain any comments or questions or thoughts on it.
So I share Gary's concern. The 360 was a total nightmare last year, and I personally got nothing out of it. And so I was really hoping to have that addressed this year. So to push it off another year feels like we're not doing our job.
So I'm going to make a few comments. If you really read the new guidance, it provides a lot more clarity. Our 360 process last year stepped so far out of bounds compared to what the guidance is that it wasn't possible to gain much given the boundaries how they expanded by request of some board members and doing the best to respond to the request of the board. That process got so far out of bounds compared to what guidance would be provided. And so, as Scott was saying, it would be my preference personally that we do that next year, but do it well in the guidance. It's agreed upon stakeholders to solicit the input between the superintendent and the board. And the time to do that is quickly fading right now under various circumstances, and the methodology in which to do that and coming up with that, given the timing, as Scott has proposed, that we would do that well for next year.
I think my thoughts, I think stakeholders are less of my concern. I think we could, even if we kept population small, I think we could agree on what a general stakeholder list should look like. My bigger concern on trying to get something done in time for this year is, and I apologize, I didn't realize that the guidance had changed, so I didn't go read it again because I thought I would be reading the old one, so I will do that after this board meeting. But my biggest takeaway from last year was that if you don't have good questions designed to we didn't get a chance to come up with that list of questions, but I think that is an important piece because we need to make sure we're asking it in the right way, we're getting the type of feedback we're looking for. And I think last year, one of the reasons we failed at trying to get what we were trying to gain from it was not having enough time to develop those questions and have a consensus amongst this entire group on what those questions should look like. So although I hate to push it off for a year, I don't want a repeat of last year of rushing through something and then not having the correct questions out there to solicit that feedback and then be right back to where we are, having to go through an emotional thing that I think, ended up not providing any good and only hurt feelings. So that's where my hesitation is with it. And so I lean towards agreeing with your suggestion, Scott, just because I don't see how with trying to reopen schools next week and doing all the things that we're asking our administration to do, to then also on top of that, develop the survey questions to go out to an agreed upon stakeholder list to have feedback in time for February and March 15th deadline that we're committed to achieving. So that's my 2 cents. I also just want to say thank you for putting the time into putting organization around that, because I think part of that was the structure we were missing, and I'm glad there's some guidance out there now to also help us kind of navigate this.
So are we saying that there isn't time, I'm trying to look at the timeline. There isn't time to establish stakeholders between here and February?
So it'd be establishing the stakeholders, developing the appropriate questions that the board would want answered by various stakeholder groups. And so that's.
And that would be by the February 23rd?
Well, so you will be receiving the surveys after our February 9th meeting. So that is when Kirk will be presenting his year-end review, if you will.
Right.
And then between the 10th and the 18th, we will then be receiving our surveys and ask to fill them out. And when we reconvene on the 23rd of February, I will be bringing back the results of the surveys that have been sent back yet, and we will present them in our executive session, and then go through a comment and this review period. I guess if people want to send me some review, I guess they can. We can include that in a separate section of our review process. But who do we contact? What are we asking them? If it's on me to develop the questions as the board chair and then try to figure out, and then get the responses back in a timely manner. I think that's a big ask of individuals to try to submit something that has any relevance or meaning to what we're doing. It's not that I don't think it should be done. I absolutely think that that's an integral part of our review process. But I think we have always been behind the 8 ball, and I think we are a little bit behind the 8 ball now as we are coming into this. And maybe some of that is my fault and just not thinking ahead far enough as we're going through. But I think we can be better prepared next year. I think what I would like to say to the board is that we identify those individuals we'd like to hear from. And what do we want to ask them, and how do we want that to look? And I think that document provides a good basis for that. So that's where I would say, yes, I think it's imperative that we do that. I just don't know that we're going to be able to do it well this year. So, Cliff?
Well, if you were to go back and study the history of the superintendent evaluation, we didn't do it for years the way it's done now. And we finally started. When we started, we opted out of the 360 aspect because it was a clear choice. But you didn't have to do that unless you had maybe a new superintendent that wasn't known in town. You wanted to see, didn't know, maybe a year or two if he was accepted by the voters out there, the constituents. And so we didn't even do it. If we were communicating as a board our satisfaction in our evaluation of the superintendent, and the patrons out there respected us as a board, they took our word for what we had done, and it worked fine. And then what I was hearing about other school districts when I looked at this on an OSBA level was that the only time they ever used the 360 is when they really did need some help. The board needed some help to see whether their superintendent was satisfactory or not. They didn't even know. So I think it depends on how far along you are. We have a superintendent been here now 4 or 5 years, we're getting to know him pretty well. And then the other thing is we're in these extreme circumstances where it's hard to concentrate on that type of thing when you're thinking about vaccines or, wearing your mask or you forgot your mask or whatever. It's not a good year, I don't think, to do a 360 for sure. And I even question whether it's something we need to pursue in the future, but that's just me talking from history.
Does Gary's
Gary
gonna talk. He's got his mask on. Go for it, Gary.
Part that drives me crazy is when we always say we don't have enough time.
I know, but I know,
You
it's our
can't
own
say
fault.
every year we don't have enough time.
Sure, but this year's a little different. Obviously, we messed up
This
last
year
year.
isn't different.
It is different.
No, last year was different. Last year's when it started. And everything went crazy was in March. This is nearly a year later. It's not like it's a surprise. And
Well, it's not a surprise.
it's not so much that I care about how this particular one goes, but I really like to see the board, whatever you want to call it, get their feet under them so that it's not rushed and gosh, we're not doing it this year, let's wait till next year. That's the part. If we can get that right, I'd be happy to wait a year. But this has kind of been an ongoing thing that we're always late and rushed.
Who was board chair last year that messed the time? No. I'm just saying, I think it's bad here to my finger. I think I agree with you, but I think it we can't just, if it's important enough to us to do it, we're gonna do it. And if it's not, then the proof's in the pudding on whether or not we get our act together and do it right. But I'd rather do it right than not do it right, because I saw the fallout from not doing it right last year. And the thing that stuck with me all there, even though I know it's a last year issue, there's something new every other week that we're having to deal with as a district for COVID. This week's no different, next week's gonna be no different. And the thing that has stuck with me from whatever the OSBA webinar thing that I attended, when it was talking about what you could do as a school board member or as a school board collectively to help support your school district through COVID, is we've got enough on our plates for right now. If you've got beef with your superintendent, let it lie and figure it out once we get on the other side, because it's gonna not do any good for the kids to rock the boat unnecessarily. And I although I was a huge advocate for 360 last year, I want to do it right. And I don't think we have the time to do it this year. And we'll put our money where our mouth is, because if we come and show up to the party ready next year, then we'll have our answer. And if we don't, we'll have that answer too.
Okay, I'm good with that. Because we don't have time, we're going to put it off to next year. When's the time to start it so that we can do it appropriately?
So I think, as I laid out in the email, so we have our February meeting set. The time between April and June is the work that we would do to set our goals and our timelines for the following 21-22 school year. And I think that's the time when we sit down and we can identify key stakeholders we wish to contact. We can lay out the calendar to make sure that we are prepared to come in, so that on March 15th, we can hand the superintendent his contract and say, this is what we're planning on doing. I don't think we've been able to accomplish that, at least the last couple of years that I was on the board. And so we have between April and June, I think, to make sure that our goals and the strategic plan is in place for the upcoming school year, and that we as a board can make sure that we are ready to go for that evaluation that we would do the next February. So is there time to do that? Yes, I think there is. Is there time to finish that and do it well right now? I don't think so. And I'd like, as I've heard and I agree with, I think we saw how it can go last year and it was bad. And I think it was more detrimental than helpful. And I'd like to make this a constructive process and make sure that we do it right. So that would be my recommendation as the future.
So the timeline you laid out, not confusing. Because something like there's a March date for doing contracts, and you just postulated that we go from April, May, and June.
That's to set up the strategic plan and our goals for the following year.
Correct. But the contract will have already been over before we even start that.
Correct. So he's talking about setting up as part of our goals, but we will be evaluating Kirk on for the following March 15th contract decision as part of the following February 2022 evaluation process. So there will be no 360 input informing the evaluation survey that we're filling out here in a few weeks for this upcoming March 15th contract deadline. Let's spend April through June to set up what that evaluation on the 360 part will look like the following February.
Remember when we set up our strategic plan this year, or this last year, 2020, it was very rushed. We were kind of scrambling to get that up and put it together in place. And I would prefer that we have the opportunity to do that over several months and plan out the year coming up. I think that's a better option for us to look forward and to feel more planned and prepared as we move forward to the year, as far as what the district's goals are and what we hope to accomplish as a board. And that was rushed last year as we kind of went into that. So I think what we're doing is we're setting the groundwork for future boards to be able to follow and have a nice process set up into place that I don't think we've had in the past.
In that case, we should just skip and start that now, because essentially what you just said is we're not really doing anything this year.
For the 360.
Okay.
But there's still been a superintendent evaluation for the past however many years that's not included in 360, which is essentially what we're saying is would be the plan for this next month.
Okay, so we're gonna do a superintendent evaluation by what?
And survey.
The survey, which will be sent out between the 8th.
So if you read the document, you'll understand pretty clearly what the process is, as Scott laid out in his email with regard to the timeline for the superintendent evaluation. It really, the timeline he laid out follows the OSBA model. So the activities.
Did you read any of the book that we
Yes,
have with that?
they did. And actually, it's unclear. And they actually have some of the boxes prior to the boxes that we're supposed to go through right now, which was confusing. Remember that picture? Had a little thing to do stuff, and then had a second row going to do stuff.
So we've laid it out, I think, to the best of my ability to make it organized for us.
Okay.
So this is Brownell. And after rereading the manual that was included with the outline of the timeline for this process, I feel that we did lay some very strong groundwork at the beginning of the this school year regarding our strategic plan and the pillars of that. I remember extensive conversations and meetings regarding that. I believe that I would be able to fill out a survey looking at where we are in our goals from that process. And I am very hesitant to ask, for instance, any of our directors who have been working so hard for so many months trying to get our kids back in school to, and they've been working as a very good team. And I don't believe we need to go to this 360 step this year. And like I said, I feel confident that all of us can fill out that survey and judge correctly how well administration has worked on those goals. Thank you.
Debbie. Member DeLaGrange, I understand that this is another weird year and administration is scrambling. I do have a level of discomfort without getting other stakeholder input for the review. Just having the board members weigh in on that. I mean, obviously we have an important perspective, but there's also important perspective from the administration and from staff and from other stakeholders. So I just have a level of discomfort without soliciting any of that input. I don't know if there's anything we can necessarily do about it this year, but certainly next year, I want to make sure we have that ironed out.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I think, you know, we solicited that information last year and it just was not helpful.
Correctly.
And so really, I think it's trying to understand how to do that well so that the information that we get back is meaningful to us. So I agree. I think getting feedback from other stakeholders is imperative as a board so that we can make a good decision about our most important role, which is to evaluate the superintendent. But I think we need to do that well. And after my experience last year, I'm just hesitant to jump into something again, just to hope that we can say we got feedback when it's really just gobbledygook at the end of the day. It was not very helpful. But I echo what you're saying. We do need to make sure that happens. And I think to be a good board, we need to work diligently between April and June to figure out who those stakeholders are and how we want to approach them so that we can have that organized.
Do you have it, I mean, like, is it 5 stakeholders? I mean, I know we went really broad
I
last.
don't know if you read the guidance, but it would be, I would provide the board a
Yeah.
list of suggested, and if the board wanted to extend beyond that, I would provide a board the list of suggested stakeholders based on those
But
are folks we work with,
Right.
right? And in what context, what is the context of the relationship between the district and the stakeholders? Are
Right,
they
but I'm trying to
district
get a number of
administration?
how.
Are they community organizations? And so, so the handbook does not provide a specific number, but it says be very intentional about who you include.
Right, so do we have an idea? I mean, I think that's what we decided April to do. Would that be
So
okay? Well, he would
last
provide it.
year,
Yeah, but we could
proposed,
provide.
what I proposed was that key group of stakeholders. And then it went very far beyond that and created what we ended up with.
We got what we asked for.
Well, I would disagree, Scott. I would disagree.
Well,
We asked for some things that we did not get.
that's why we got a mess.
That's
All right. Well, if there's no other, are there any other board reports or special concerns? So we'll move to that. We've beaten the evaluation.
So the only thing that I would add to our discussion here is, in the years that we have done a 360, which is minimal, it's pretty much mirrored our own evaluation, pretty much. I saw that, recognized that, and I thought, well, the superintendent fits in this community. That's what I'm after.
Any other special concerns? Yes.
I just wanted to take a moment to recognize Stacy Morgan, a long valued member of our district that has meant a lot to a lot of people here in our community. And his passing, he will be sorely missed. And I can speak to his impact in my life, my husband's life. And it was a very emotional time, still is an emotional time for us, hearing of him passing. Just wanted to thank him for his time and his impact he's had on the kids in our district and for the families in our community, and wanted to just take a moment to recognize that.
Thank you. All right. Well, hearing no other board reports or special concerns, we will move on to our action items. 5.1, approval of second and final reading of our revised policies and ARs. We have 5.1.1 through 5.1.7. For school counseling programs, graduation exercises, equal educational opportunity, threats of violence, public charter schools AR, and resident school denial for public charter school attendance. We will entertain a motion to approve those.
Cliff Coolman, I approve. Approval of all those.
Thank you. We have a second? Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, will you give us a roll call vote?
Member Dermot Grange,
Yes.
Member Durbin. Yes. Member Brownell,
Yes.
Board Chair Nelson.
Yes.
Member Coleman.
Yes.
Member Wilkins. Yeah. Member Richardson.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 6, future meeting dates and suggested agenda items. We have our budget committee meeting this Thursday at 7 p.m. And I believe that's a virtual event. Do not participate. And then our next board meeting will be Tuesday, February 9th, not December 9th, but February 9th at 5 o'clock. And after that, the 23rd meeting. So, unless there's any further comments, we will adjourn our meeting. Thank you all for your attendance this evening.
Do I hit the gavel for some watching?